I swear to God I never believed in any of you guys here until I started reading these stories and suddenly made some connections. I swear to God this is all true. I live in Pennsylvania just outside the city of Reading. There's a lot of thick forests around here but nothing ridiculous, and it's mostly suburbs where I am. Farther out it's highways and farmland. Lucky for me I live right up at the edge of a small community at the very top of a hill. The forest is literally across the street from me. Anyway, somewhere around a year or two ago my dad and I were outside having a personal chat about some recent tough events going on in my house when suddenly we heard a weird sound in the forest across the road. We both stopped and looked over. "I didn't think deer came out this late," I think I said. My dad just stared and looked kinda confused. Then suddenly we heard someone yell something like, "Help, I'm bleeding." We both sat there staring into the woods where it came from. My dad stood up and said to get inside. We both rushed in and I watched him run upstairs to grab his handgun. My dad's a rough sorta guy and always heads for his gun if he thinks something's going down. Something was definitely fucking going down. I opened our back door again to our deck, it was a glass door, and peeked back out towards the forest to see if anyone would come sprinting out or something. Keep in mind we're at the edge of the suburbs and not exactly used to hearing people scream bloody murder in the middle of the night. Then I heard it. This loud, weird screech. It was like a cat or a woman but it definitely wasn't human. It was weird, like it was high-pitched but not, and filled the entire neighborhood for a full 10 seconds before it suddenly went silent. I slammed the glass door shut and ran to the stairs just in time to see my dad stomping down in boots with his pistol. "Did you hear that?" I remember asking him. He just nodded and we both head out the front. By now a bunch of our neighbors were coming outside too. The scream was really fucking loud but I didn't even expect all these people to come out this late. It was almost midnight. My dad went down to the street and looked up at the forest. Another guy came up to my dad and he had some kinda handgun too. I watched them start chatting for a bit until suddenly another one of those screams pierced the air again. It was horrible and made me feel sick to my stomach. It went on for something like another 10 seconds and just suddenly cut off. Like fucking idiots my dad and this random neighbor guy decide to point their guns towards the forest and head in. I couldn't believe it. I mean my dad is a hunter and he's been doing it since he was a kid. He's almost 40, but I'd be damned if I'd do something like that. They must have been in the forest for a good 20 minutes together searching the darkness for God knows what. I sat outside with a bunch of neighbors that entire time, staring into the forest and waiting. Eventually they came back just fine. They stuck together the entire time according to my dad and thought they saw something like a tall guy in the forest at some point. When they tried to see if he was the one screaming apparently he got on all fours and hauled ass into the forest. We all were pretty shaken up but parted ways and head back to our houses. That was pretty fucking weird and no police or anything ever checked it out but eventually we all moved past it. A long while after that there was a separate incident that I didn't exactly connect to the first. Later that year I was sitting outside with my friend on my back porch. We were talking and having a grand old time dicking around when I saw my cat Jinx pawing at my glass window. "What a stupid cat," my friend said. I agreed with him and played with the cat, putting my finger on the window while he pawed at my finger wherever it went. That's not what's weird though. Later that night I was in my room playing a game with my window open. My cat was somewhere in the house, along with all our dogs, so I know he was fine. It's important to note that my neighborhood has a real problem with stray cats though. Anyway, I was sitting there playing some games with my window open when I heard what sounded like a cat meowing outside. I paused my game, wondering if Jinx had gotten outside, and went to my window to listen. I heard that meow again but it was a long, deep one, that kind you hear from a cat when they're pissed and backed in a corner with their claws out. I recognized it wasn't my cat but it was still coming from the woods behind my house so I stared into them and tried to see where the stray was at and what it was getting so pissy at. The cat did that deep, long, angry meow again and it sounded sorta close to my actual yard. I heard some shuffling in the woods and then something weird happened. I thought I could hear someone talking. Except it wasn't like a normal person's voice. It was like some mentally unstable person trying to mimic someone else really badly. It was something like stupid cat. Immediately I got creeped out but, seeing as how my window was on the second floor, I felt fairly safe to keep listening. Then I realized the voice was changing. "Stupid cat." It clicked. It sounded like something trying to sound like my friend but doing really, really badly. Then there was a serious scuffle. I heard twigs breaking and the cat just going apeshit. I mean, it was really screeching and meowing like it was fighting for life or death. Then there was this loud thumping sound. It was like something big and heavy smacking against something else solid. After that the meowing stopped completely and whatever was out there went dead silent. I was pretty creeped out by this point and I shut my window and had real trouble sleeping that night. Nothing's really happened since, aside from one incident where I was getting a drink late one night and thought I saw someone crouching really super low on my back porch and looking into my glass door. Like I saw light reflect off their eyes, like when you see an animal at night or something. The door was locked and it really freaked me right the fuck out and made me sprint to my room and wake up my dad, but he didn't find anyone or anything, and I've been assuming it was just me being scared from all these stories on /x/. Now that I've read all these stories, I'm freaking the fuck out. I've never seen one about something even remotely close to these things happening around my area, but now I'm freaking the fuck out. That shit was literally in my backyard. But yeah, that's all I got.
When I was 16, I went on a camping trip to the Colorado River near Blythe. We didn't use the government campsite, we decided to camp out back in a Three Fingers Lake area, which is just a series of backwaters and canals. So we arrived there mid-afternoon. It was mid-September and the sun was blazing. We found a spot that was a bit secluded. The tents got set up, my brother and I proceeded to go out in search of wood from the nearby willow trees. While collecting wood, I came across a series of hoof prints in the mud, as well as marks of something either sleeping there or at least bedding down in the spot from time to time. I made the assumption that it was a deer or something similar. I had seen the things along the river on other trips. We got a small fire going while we had light, set out a few fishing poles to try our luck while my uncle started up dinner. It was while dinner was cooking that I thought I heard something go into the far side of the canal farther downstream, and come back out on our side. This was something big. I turned to my brother, he didn't think anything of it. My dad thought it was a beaver. Dinner was cooked, we ate, and then set out to get some night fishing in. All four of us, dad, brother, and uncle, were focused intently upon our rods. I kept having a strange feeling that we were being watched by someone. My uncle kept telling me I'm just creeping myself out. At around midnight, we all decided to retire. We threw a few more logs onto the fire to keep some coals going, and then climbed into our tents. I decided to sleep in my own tent, since I had one. My dad had set up his big-ass 6-man tent, so the three of them shared it. I had set my tent up on a nice flat and sandy section of dirt, no rocks under me. I had a foam padding and 2 sleeping bags under me, so I was comfy. As I started to drift off to sleep, I heard something crossing the canal again. Everyone else was passed out hard, I could hear them snoring loudly. Already wary, I flipped onto my stomach, and looked out into the dark through the little mesh opening in the tent. All I could see was some dark shape emerge from the slope of the bank. It wandered on the edge of the light. I could hear it sniffing around. The sound of hooves on the ground made me think deer. But then its shape came just within sight to make out a form against the dark sky. It was on 2 legs. I scrunched down into my tent and stopped moving. My mind raced, trying to decide on what I saw and what I was hearing. I convinced myself it was just deer sniffing around and that I was confused. The sounds of the thing faded away after what seemed like hours. I lay there, straining to hear any more noise. All I could hear was the sound of insects and the occasional bullfrog. I finally was able to get some sleep. I was awoken after dawn. Breakfast was already made, coffee and soda waiting, whatever I wanted. I stumbled out, ate my breakfast, started asking everyone if they heard anything last night. None of them had. After changing, and while the heat was still at bay, I walked over to where I had seen the creature. Numerous hoof marks littered the dirt. I followed them over to where we had found all the wood. There was clear signs something had returned to the spots. Oil had been churned up. I walked back to the campsite, trying to think nothing of it. We spent the day swimming in the canal. Something in the back of my mind kept telling me whatever I saw last night was still around, watching us. That evening, it was my turn to cook. I set up some burgers to cook over the fire while everyone else was going about their business. As I was about to pull the burgers off the fire, when my uncle came running from the willow patch. He started saying there's some weird shit going on back in there. I put the burgers aside, and we all followed him. Farther back in the willow trees, there was what looked like some sort of altar. It was constructed of river stones, and on it sat a half-eaten fish and all sorts of smashed bones. Little reed-tied shapes sat around it, like voodoo dolls made from twigs. We all made our way out, talking about how creeped out we were. My dad and uncle agreed that it was probably some pagan altar or something, because it was hidden. They both agreed that to be the last night we stayed. That night we kept the fire big until we went to bed. I kept eyeing the way to the willow patch. As I lay there, I heard the thing cross the canal again. I could hear the hooves once more. It circled to the far side of the camp. Once it got to the willow trees, I lost track of it. I strained to hear anything for a long time. I was certain the others were doing the same. Then we heard the most horrible sound erupt from the grove. It was a scream, like someone being murdered, but it had a braying quality to it. I was terrified. I clutched my camp shovel, knowing that something was out there. I heard movement from the other tent. From the other tent, I heard my dad and my uncle emerge. I heard my dad tell my brother to stay in the tent. They both went to the car. I heard my dad talking about getting their guns just in case. My father and his brother always brought pistols with them when we went camping. You never know what kind of animal or crazy person might show up. They both walked off into the dark towards the willow trees. Things were deadly silent. No insects. Nothing but a dull breeze. Then I heard 2 gunshots, followed by another horrible gargled scream. I heard the 2 come running full speed back to the camp. They started screaming at us to get into the car. My brother and I came out of the tents. My dad screamed at us. "Get in the fucking car now. Get in the fucking car." They both had their pistols in hand, and headed straight for the car. We all got in. He started it, and began hauling ass down the dirt road. He started saying they saw something back in there. My uncle was white. He told us we'll be back for our stuff later. My dad didn't stop until we reached Blythe. He got on his cell phone, and called the police. The police thought my father had shot a homeless man camped out at the river. We headed back in. By the time we returned to the campsite, it was dawn. The tents were torn down, everything was tossed about. Fishing rods busted. Our camp table was in several pieces scattered about. The police searched the area, found the altar and told us we most likely shot at some teens who were out doing their devil worshipping. There was no blood, but hoof prints everywhere again. The police told us to clean everything up and that we should probably leave. We cleaned the site up, gathering the now mostly ruined gear. As I rolled up my tent, I felt something hit my back. I looked down to see one of the wooden figures from the altar in the willows. I looked around in time to see something recede into the reeds, followed by the splashing in the canal. I finished packing everything up, and we left. We haven't gone back since. My dad, brother, and uncle still talk about it, and we all refuse to return to camp near Blythe since.
I'll go ahead and share mine. I won't green text it, too long for that. I was going camping with this group of about 10 to 15 people for some volunteer work I was doing, looks good on resumes and whatnot. There were only 4 other people around my age, 23, the rest were either really young, 13 to 15, or in their 40s or 50s. The 4 others and I were pretty good friends, and we usually don't get much sleep whenever we're spending a weekend together. This trip was for 3 days. It was spring break, and I hadn't slept the night before, but I'm conditioned to going on no sleep pretty well, so I had no problem when one of our 4 suggested that we go on a hike. We decided to go pretty late at night so none of the youngsters would follow us in. Unfortunately, our plan didn't work and we ended up with an entire pack of teenagers following us. We had an obligation to watch them because 3 out of 5 of us were volunteers, so we had no choice. We'd decided to make it short, and take them on a pretty rough hike so they wouldn't come with us whenever we went hiking the next time. It ended up being a bad idea. We ended up splitting up into several groups. I stayed with one group with one of my friends. One of the other 4, the big guy, decided to go trail some deer we spotted earlier. The deer scared one of the girls who screamed at the top of her lungs and was being skittish about everything out there. Another was with the other group of kids. And the last one decided to head back to camp. Needless to say, the hike was ruined. We ended up far enough from camp. And while there were a bunch of annoying teens with us, we were convinced one of the kids from the other group was in the forest trying to fuck with us. We heard rustling at several points, and we kept hearing the same scream deeper in the woods, which sounded like the girl who screamed earlier about the deer. She was with the other group. Anyway, we got back to camp, told the kiddos to shut the fuck up and go to sleep, because they were being loud the entire hike. And we all set up base next to this trail that lead into the woods. We stayed there for several hours before morning, simply because we couldn't sleep, when the big guy who left to hunt some deer joined us. Later on I was discussing with him how the deer seemed abnormally large, and he just turned to me with a serious look on his face and said those weren't deer. I got almost right next to one. All I could see were its eyes, and it wasn't moving. It was almost as big as me. Now, keep in mind that this guy was about 6 feet 6 inches or 6 feet 7 inches, and he's one of those heavy-set guys who you'd think would be able to kill a man in one punch, and he seemed pretty spooked. I thought he was fucking around and dismissed it. Fast forward to the next night. The previous hike took too much of a toll on the teens, save 2. One of them was this loud chick, and I didn't mind having her around as much as the other kid. The other was a complete retard. He was loud, annoying, and had a sense of humor equivalent to that unfunny eel meme. He tried making jokes all the time. There was never a moment of silence from this kid. This time only the big guy, 2 of our 5-man group, and 2 teens went with us. We decided to go see some sights this time. Apparently when a few of them had gone camping before, they found this secret room next to this old fort-type building. While we were headed to that room, the retarded kid got separated from us. He just wandered off with his flashlight. We ended up finding him and he got scolded for being stupid and wandering off at 1 a.m. when he didn't know the area. Instead of being a whiny bitch like he usually would, he was completely silent, and he seemed kind of like he was in a daze. At this point we hadn't slept for 2 days. For me it was 3, so I chalked it up to him being tired and not being able to handle the hike. Later on I realized that the kid had slept that last night, because I saw him go into his tent and crash with most of the teenagers. The other girl hadn't, however. So we go back to the fort and head up to the top room, where the chick had decided to go to sleep. The whole way back, that retarded kid was walking really awkwardly. He looked like a goddamn baby horse, not to mention he was being completely silent still. One of us had to walk behind him to make sure he didn't fall back onto the rocks. Anyway, when we got to that top room and the chick fell asleep, that kid laid down and fell asleep immediately after. We didn't care that much. They're about 13 and 14, they couldn't handle it, we guessed. The rest of us entertained ourselves by making fucking shadow puppets for 2 hours. At the end of that, we were all kind of dozing off, and we were all so sleep deprived we couldn't smell cigarette smoke anymore. I was the most alert of them, probably because I was still sitting up and keeping watch. At about 3 a.m. the kid stands up out of nowhere, and the other guys snap out of it because we're thinking the fuck is he doing now? And he starts stumbling toward me in his awkward jerky movements, and I'm there thinking he's going to fucking fall on me, so I start telling him to sit back down, and then the others join in and command him to sit back down. At this point he starts twitching backwards, and there's a ledge not too far behind him, so we're yelling at him to sit the fuck back down now because we think he's going to fall off. The big guy is about to stand up and so am I, so this kid doesn't die. Then the kid starts sounding like he's trying to talk, and I have no idea what he's trying to say. His voice doesn't sound normal at all, and he collapses back down and goes back to sleep. We brush it off because we're tired and we decide it's time to go back to camp. So we wake up the chick, and say it's time to go. As we try to wake the kid up, he won't budge. My first thought is he's dead, Jim, but the big tries picking him up and he ends up standing up on his own, but he still isn't moving correctly, so the big guy has to pretty much carry the fucker back down, along with his bag, into the truck we all came in, which wasn't too far. The rest of us get our stuff in and get in, and the kid tries getting into the same side as me and he twitches backward before he gets in. It was at this point I noticed that he's kind of bruised up. Not really on his head much, just on his arms. He didn't have those bruises the night before. He's still being quiet and shit, so I check his forehead to make sure he's not dying or anything and he doesn't have a fever. Plus I know he didn't do any drugs because the program we were volunteering for is one of those churchy drug-free programs. So I have no idea what the fuck is wrong with him. When we get back to camp he gets out, leaves his bag and his flashlight, which was weird because he was being pissy about anyone touching either of them when we began our hike. He goes off toward the edge of the campsite, and his tent wasn't over there, but we don't care at this point because we think he's probably just taking a piss or something, and when we're at the site, he's not our responsibility anymore. Everyone else goes to sleep immediately but me and the big guy stay awake for a bit and discuss what happened with the retarded KIC. The big guy's in /x/file too, and we'd both read about Goatman a few times, so we brought that up. As we were discussing it and analyzing the situation, it just got more and more eerie, and at one point he mentioned that while the kid was standing up all the crickets and shit just went quiet in the background, which I'd barely noticed at the time. We decided to keep watch, because we hadn't seen any sign of that kid yet. About 30 minutes into our watch he decided that he needs his phone to keep track of the time and I needed to take a piss, so we left our watch. He took my flashlight because it's brighter than his, and I took the kid's flashlight because I wasn't going far. Before we left, he set his flashlight down on the bed of our friend's truck. As I'm headed back I see a few flashes from what I thought was my flashlight, and it was just some flickering like someone was tumbling it on and off. It was him signaling me to where he was, so we sat back down and resumed our watch. Barely even a few minutes later he realized that his flashlight was gone. We searched for it and turned up with nothing. I just told him to use my flashlight, but we were both pretty alert at this point. About 10 minutes later his dog, which he'd left at the campsite while we were hiking, lifts up his head and starts growling at the woods. I'm watching that side because we were both keeping an eye on each other's blind sides, and when I look over to where the dog was growling I see something flickering in the woods. These woods are about 40 to 50 feet from our current location, so I let him know. Now we're both just watching this flickering in the woods and we realize that it looks like his flashlight, and it's flashing on and off like it was signaling. I then realized that the forest was quiet again, the crickets had stopped chirping and everything. We just sit there and watch it because fuck investigating, and it stops about 15 minutes later. A while after that he decides he needs to get some sleep because he'll be driving back the next day, and I say alright, I stay up and patrol the site, so I do. It's cold as fuck out there and I'm armed with nothing but a flashlight and axe. It was about 4:50 a.m. Luckily, nothing else happened that night. The next day we see the retard kid again, and I had no idea where he came from. He didn't come out of his tent, and the last time I'd seen him he was headed toward the woods. Someone told him to get in the car, and he just went in and sat there while some other people packed up his stuff. No one else seemed to notice his weird speaking because everyone was busy packing their stuff and loading it up. When we got back I headed home immediately to shower and get some sleep. The next time I went back to that place I volunteer for, the kid wasn't there. He was always there. This happened over a week ago and I still haven't heard anything about the kid, nor have I seen him.
Found one. The other one is pretty long though. In the summer of 2010 I ended up in Hardinsburg, Kentucky for my grandmother's funeral. The only other time I had been up there was when I had been younger, and it was so that my grandfather could be the priest for my dad's current marriage. Anyways, I was in Kentucky for 5 or 6 days and spent every night at my cousin's/aunt's, I am not really sure which she is, house. Of the grandchildren who were grown up, I was the youngest and ended up on babysitting duty for the majority of the time up there. I stayed in a little trailer at the top of a hillock along with a bunch of my younger cousins. During the day everyone would go over to my granddad's and leave me there with the kids, and then come home for a few hours and put the kids to bed before heading back out to go and do God knows what. I stayed up pretty late on the last night we were there. The kids were in bed and I had the place to myself for quite a while, so I figured I would go and sit on the porch enjoying a cigarette. As I walked out the door there was this god-awful stench. It was a metallic/shitty smell that is really hard to describe, but I am sure if you have smelled it you know what I am saying. It was just this gross-ass stench that hit me like a ton of bricks when I got outside. I started gagging and walked down the stairs of the trailer thinking I would get some fresh air off the porch. As I got down I saw in the moonlight what looked like one of my younger cousins, Aiden. He was just kind of standing there, with his back to me a good 50 feet away from the trailer. I yelled out to the little kid that he needed to get back inside or his mama would flay him alive, but he just kept standing there. I kept hollering and walked up to him, and as I got closer I noticed he seemed kind of off. He was standing, but he had his knees bent at weird angles to each other and his head was cocked to the side a little. I tapped him on the shoulder and he turned around. Aiden had this crazy, manic smile on his face and sweat was just pouring off of his little forehead. He started shaking and it took me a moment to realize that he was laughing 'cause no sound was coming out. I tried to pick him up and carry him inside so I could look at him in some decent light and make sure he was okay, but he must have backstepped as I tried to get him. I snatched at him again, and I caught him and he just started screaming in this really freaky guttural voice I didn't think he could make. It was just way too deep and gruff for a 5-year-old to make. While he was screaming, he was also flailing his arms and legs around. He ended up making contact with my groin so I dropped him, and he ran off towards the trailer. I sat there hunched over for a moment getting some air before running up after him. He was gone when I looked up, so I ran inside hoping he would be waiting for me in the living room. Well, he wasn't, but after some looking around, I found him passed out in the top bunk of his bunk bed. I was confused as shit, but I wasn't going to wake him up and I just decided I would let his mom know about it when she got home. When my aunt got home a few hours later I told her about it, and she woke Aiden up to ask about it. He had no clue whatsoever what we were talking about and we ended up sending him back to bed after giving him some juice. My aunt thinks I must have had some crazy vivid dream and made it up, but the next morning while I was loading my stuff up into the truck, I smelled that gross smell and I would have sworn I saw Aiden darting underneath the trailer. Had he not walked out the front door a split second later along with the rest of the family I would have chased after him, but I just told myself I was imagining things, and didn't say anything to my family.
Alright, so here it comes, part 1. Well, to start with I will give you a short pre-story. My family owns a small house at the sea in a small region with about 250 people 30 minutes from a town called Sundsvall and then other parts of Sweden. If you look this up on a map you will notice that there is a lot of forest at the coast and that's where I spend most of my summers. I have done so since I was about 5 years old and during the summer about 50 more come to live in this region. Luckily for me I met 4 people all 1 year older than me there and we have for the last 12 years hung out during the entire summers, so we are all naturally very close. As we have grown older we have gotten bored with just hanging out in the village with maybe 60 inhabitants and have started to explore the place. Naturally this means we explore the forest. 2 summers ago one of the guys told us about a lake in the woods that his dad used to take him fishing when he was younger. I know this might sound made up, it's not, there are plenty of these small lakes inside the woods. This one just happens to have a lot of fish so some people went there. Anyways, naturally we decided we should go there and check it out. It was like a 15-minute drive with a moped so we went out there a lot during that summer, but never spent the night. Part 2. Last summer they had all gotten their driver's license, 18 in Sweden, and we could go farther away and bring things. So then one night, sitting at my friend's house playing Monopoly or something as we usually did. One of the guys, let's call him Carl, said, "Hey, why don't we go to the lake and sleep there for a couple of nights and just fish from the lake and just bring potatoes, things to drink and other things we really need?" We all thought this was a fun idea and had been thinking about doing it the previous summer, but decided that we wanted a car to bring things in and in case of an emergency. The next day at the afternoon we left. We had bought the things we needed and had a big lunch. We brought more than we need. We brought phones and a stereo, but it didn't really matter. Also, and I know this may make it less believable, we brought alcohol, but I can say that I am very sure this had nothing to do with what happened. I will say why soon. The first night was normal. We had potatoes so we could stay 4 days if we wanted, but decided that first night that we were going to save the alcohol for the second night. We didn't have too much and it would only be enough for one night of being shit-faced. Part 3. The second day was normal, the night was not. Out of the 5 of us, 2 don't really like to drink. Let's call them John and Felix. We started the music and me, Carl, and let's call the girl Hannah, started to get our drink on. After a while Carl and Hannah started making out. For me this wasn't out of the ordinary, but for the others it was. John wasn't a big fan of Hannah and he and Carl were best friends, so Carl had kept it a secret from him. It had happened a few times over the past 3 summers, but he had only seen it once the first of the 3 summers, so he was surprised but didn't care too much. Felix had a crush on Hannah, and I guess he had since he was like 8, and it never really went away completely. The last and only time he had seen it, he had started to cry and claimed his girlfriend that he had never mentioned earlier had been in an accident. It is safe to say he did not like it. So when he got up and said that he wasn't feeling well, and was going to take his car and go home to sleep because he wasn't feeling well, I wasn't surprised and pretended to believe him after some fake "no, please don't go. Are you sure you have to?" It wasn't weird at all that he left his stuff and said he would be back tomorrow, so there was no reason bringing it with him, and left for his car. What was weird was when he came back after a while. Part 4. I can't say how long it had been since I wasn't paying attention to my phone and I was pretty drunk. I remember thinking that he was acting weird, but thought that it was probably because of the previous make-out session. However, after a while I started to come back and he was still the same. He usually talks a lot but had been so quiet the entire time, only answered questions, and when he did, it was just short answers. I remember feeling that it started to get a bit creepy. Honestly, I didn't think he was still that obsessed with her, and even if he was, why didn't he just go home? Did he just stay to see what they did? This is something that I didn't recall upon until I started to read the posts on /x/ about this a while back, but now I can remember clearly how he tried to get one-on-one with all of us all the time. The only times he started a conversation was when someone got up. He instantly got up as well and asked where the person was going and he could join. The one I recall the most and I thought was the oddest was when he asked Hannah if he could join her when she said she was going to pee. At this point I could see that my sober friend also had a feeling something was up. We looked at each other and he got up and said, "I need to call my girlfriend," and quickly Felix was up, but before he could speak, John added, "Anon, could you join me? I need to ask you about that thing." At that point I remember looking at Felix and his eyes were just blank, as they had been since he got back. Part 5. The conversation was quick. We both agreed that something was up, and since he is the only one in the group except me that believes in paranormal shit, we both agreed that this is probably nothing, but we both quickly shared that something could be up. We agreed to make the others go home with us, and went back to camp. Carl and Hannah were looking pretty tired, so it was easy to convince the 2 drunken tired people to go home for the night. We had 2 cars, one belonging to Felix and one to John, and since they were the sober ones they would be the drivers. Now we just had to make sure he would go in a car alone. He did not seem pleased with the decision to leave, but we didn't really care. And luckily for us he told us that he had parked his car elsewhere when he had almost left, because he started driving and then came back. We didn't really care and parted ways. The next day, after almost no sleep and having John spend the night in my house, we went together to Felix's house just 50 meters away from mine. I remember him eating breakfast and sitting on his laptop. When we came close he came out and said, "What the hell is your problem?" I was shocked and asked what the hell he was talking about. He then filled me in on his night, how I had come after him on his way to the car and asked if he wanted to go for a walk since he seemed down. He had accepted and we had walked for a while. Then I had told him I had to go for a pee and then I was gone. He was surprised but figured that drunk as I was I had gone back to the others. He was angry about this but had taken his car and gone home. This was 2 hours before we had left. Part 6, last part. I remember John saying something like, "Alright, haha, good one. You really had us scared, sorry if we made you angry or something." Felix looked surprised back and I told him what he meant. The face he made then made it clear that he had not played a prank on us. After that we sat down. After a while we started talking. We talked for like 30 minutes. Everyone wanted to be, no one was messing around, and since that talk we have all pretended like it never happened. I realize there might be gaps and grammatical errors, etc. So sorry about that, but I didn't really care. For those of you that thinks it's bullshit, I honestly couldn't care less. Feel free to ask questions if you want to. This is OC and I only wrote it on request, never writes long texts, and I realize this is shitty, but it's simply the truth.
Innawoods with only like 15 guns and only one set of body armor, it was supposed to be a relaxing hike. Set up my tent, only brought one designed for 6 people, with only 3 rooms, because wasn't planning to camp. Dude's tongue my anus, I said, unprompted. As is tradition. Dude's tongue anus echoes all around me, as if said by an angry cat being neutered without anesthetic. Based, I say, as the copper smell I definitely have no knowledge of hits me. The Jews are responsible for every war in recorded history, says the creature. That voice though. It's Adolf Hitler. But he died. So I start firing blindly into the trees, which is my right as an American. Uncle Adolf's voice shrieks in the righteous anger only a man persecuted by the synagogue of Satan can truly understand. Check for a body. No sign of the creature, only the families that were at the campground I parked at. None of the women or children look anything like Hitler. Oh god, oh fuck. Haven't been able to take amphetamines in the woods except for 2 or 3 times since. Really shook me up. I scoured the internet for stories about creatures in the woods that mimic voices and smell like copper, but obviously found nothing. Anybody have any idea what it could have been? Fucking good stuff, Anon. Fucking keck. Put me in the screen cap. Set up my tent, only brought one designed for 6 people, with only 3 rooms, because wasn't planning to camp. LOL.
Feel like contributing as well. Rural PNW around 7 years ago. Decide to go hiking, take my dog, hop in my truck and drive way in the bumfuck nowhere in state land where a trail is by some mines. Get to trail around 10 AM, sky is relatively blue, rarity around here, and I'm the only vehicle at the trailhead. Not a hugely common trail for people to go to, but it's unique enough to bring a few folks. Trail consists of a winding path down a steep hillside/cliff that has a few cars from the 1950s that someone obviously drove off the road at some point but they were unable to recover. Has a series of old railroad tracks and a large, dark tunnel beside a fairly swift-moving river as well. Anyway, I start down the hillside with my dog and we're quietly enjoying the walk. I've been here several times before, so it isn't a hike I'm unfamiliar with. Get to the bottom and you walk through a series of trees whose branches create a circular portal type of look which is very scenic. Walk about 10 minutes when dog starts to slow and I start to notice how quiet things have become. I shrug it off and coax my dog forward but she's hesitant. Continue for a little ways farther and she starts trying to sit and not go forward anymore. I start to notice the oppressive feeling of silence around me and the light from the sky under the tree canopy has already started to turn an orangey glow that seems like dusk far too early. The orange light and the tunnel of branches have an eerie feeling and I start to get scared, real nervous. It's getting dark far too quickly and I know I shouldn't be here. Instinctively I know I need to get out now. I start to back up, and then I feel eyes on me, eyes I can't see but know I feel. Like the feeling you get when you're in traffic and know someone is looking at you and you turn to see them staring. My hair on my arms and neck bristle, and my dog shies up against me and is backpedaling as well. I draw my handgun from the holster at my side and keep it about chest level in plain view. I say in a slightly loud voice of faux confidence, "Man, I sure feel more confident with my gun here with me." I'm slowly stepping backward, the silence is oppressive but I know something is there. I think I see leaves move to my left. Come on Scout, let's go back, I think we went far enough today. I say, gun still raised and walking backward. Slowly turn around but keep my head over my shoulder and gun up, letting my dog pull me back the way we had come from. Begin whistling poorly and see branches around the portal move after being brushed by something. Walk a bit faster but not enough to show I'm fleeing or afraid, gun up. Eventually get to the bottom of the hill and let go of the leash for my dog. She sprints up and I follow. Hear snapping of twigs around a bend and soft, quick footsteps echo in the portal. Get to the top of the hill and see a Subaru parked there with people starting to get out in hiking gear. They see me, pistol raised, red-faced and out of breath. Something is down there, maybe a mountain lion or something, you need to leave. I tell them and they hurriedly agree and drive off. I get in my truck and peel out with my dog leaned against me the whole drive back, obviously terrified, and I'm white as a sheet. Next month a woman was found savagely murdered on the same trail and no one has found who, or what, killed her. I have never been back and refuse to go back as well. I'm convinced the place is haunted or inhabited by something malign.
This is from my experience. I made a few art pieces so you can relate more. Good old drug trip at 2020, boat camp after graduation. Be me, on a bus to camping trip. Bring 50 UG acid tabs. Time to party on Thebes.png. We both took half of the tabs with my friend. No effects but imagination improved drastically. Weird deja vu feeling. Get in the camp and meet other peeps. Smoke some weed at night. The shit they given us for food was shat all out, like I mean no meat, just vegetables baked into fucking pasta. Fucking vegetable packed and baked pasta. We all say what the fuck. School profit kept getting worse, so a lot of corruption. Teacher had some weed on a shelf. Someone told me to steal it. I stole it. Every kid from camp comes to smoke weed. Imking.png. The same MF tells on me after smoking weed. The camp organizers somehow didn't know. So much corruption, WTF. This camp trip is feeling like some Stranger Things creepypasta, but it was real. My friend gives his last half of LSD tab for me. See yellow triangles raining down while eyes closed. Dope trip. Next day someone brought strong nicotine tabs. We have a boat day, which means getting on a river and start pedaling rice boys. The boat days were so retarded just because it rained, couldn't go on boat sometimes, but it was extremely fun. Have a weird feeling going around a specific urban grown area. Remember the last acid trip having a vision of a building in said urban area. The actual same building emerges from the ground as my boat was getting closer. I shit my bricks and all my dopamine receptors are activated. Feels like 5x salvia at this point just cause of the deja vu I'm feeling. Does weak acid last this long? Depart on land. Road is warm so my feet feel good even though it rains a bit. Go by a train back to the camp. At camp after sunset 3 people are taking strong nicotine tabs. I join cause fuck it. Trees' coronas are starting to look like fractals because of the light coming through the leaves. Weird shit happening again. Suddenly we all feel watched. See a white glowing figure watching us from the woods. It has no clothes. It has no face. It has no body structure. It looks like a stick man walking over the road symbol. It's white and glowing. It runs behind a tree. It disappears without showing on the other side. As if it were two-dimensional. Everyone saw it. MP4. Panic. Run into a tent. Forget about it after smoking a fat J.
Be me. Nashville 2017. If you know anything about the city, you'll know that it was around this time it started getting big. What's important to note is that before this, the city was a near perfect blend of rural and urban, not everywhere, but a lot of places. I lived in a suburb where driving 15 minutes in opposite directions would take you either downtown, or into natural reserve territory. It was in this suburb. Had my first legitimate spiritual encounter, and I will die on the hill that I didn't imagine any of it. Be brother. Find free 90s style TV. Beaten up but pleasant aesthetic. Mom doesn't want it in the house, hide it in the backyard until coming to decision on what to do with it. Backyard nothing but thick copses of trees and nature. Remember, depending on where you live there's a perfect blend of city and nature. It wasn't uncommon for some neighborhoods to be divided by thick patches of legitimate forest. Eventually come to the decision to hide it in forest. Secret forest hideout. Secrecy. Wait until nightfall to move it cause Hoa is trash. Nightfall. Join brother to hide it in forest. Halfway through backyard when something's wrong. We'll continue in next post cause it's my first time telling this story with green text, not sure about the word limit. Feel something's wrong. Brother, what are you outing about? Drugs. Seriously, be quiet. Everything is silent on a humid summer's night. No bugs, no wind, no people, no crickets. Something is seriously out of place. Distinctly feel like we're being watched, but there are no neighbors out at 11 p.m. Feel multiple pairs of eyes, start looking around. Nothing around. Brother starts talking again and tell him to be quiet. Do you feel that? We're being watched. No, we're not. Keep looking around because something is watching us, multiple somethings. Feel chills up my spine and goosebumps. Few seconds later. The most stereotypical fog rolls in, wide, covers vision, but not thick enough to not see through. Something is seriously not right, start panicking cause I can't find the source. As quickly as it came in, fog disappeared. Couldn't have been more than a minute. When it disappears, revealed the location of the staring. I distinctly remember it and my description hasn't changed in the years since this took place. To one side of our house, next to a tree lining, was what I could only describe as an inky group of malevolent entities. I remember staring at that patch of darkness and seeing this group's eyes piercing through my brother and I. Their stares felt oily, inky, and dark. That is the most apt description I can give of how it felt being stared at by them. Almost as important was that I could tell they were malevolent. I could tell they meant to cause harm to my brother and I. What they were going to do, and when, I had no idea, but I know for a fact they meant us harm. Stare at the entities. Brother is mildly freaking out cause he can't sense them and I'm acting borderline schizo. Why haven't they heard us? As soon as the thought enters my mind, another group above the tree lining reveals themselves. At least 3 times bigger than malevolent spirits. Saw the group as they kept the entities at bay. Guarding my brother and I from their harm. 2 groups. Standing there menacingly. This is a spiritual Cold War. Who's going to give first? After that incident, I remember looking at games like Final Fantasy or any RPGs that have you fighting spirits/gods and laughing. Standing before the 2 groups, I remember as clear as day I had 0 amounts of fear for the simple reason I couldn't comprehend what was in front of me. I knew what I was looking at, but I couldn't comprehend just how otherworldly these things were. I couldn't grasp their immensity like recognizing infinity, but only as a concept. You don't know how deep infinity really is. Malevolent group staring at us. Defending group staring at them. Continued for what felt like hours, was most likely 40 to 60 seconds. Malevolent groups vanishes like a wisp. Defending group watched them leave, stuck around for another 10 seconds to make sure they were gone. Leave. Crickets come back. Tell brother we'll put the TV in the woods tomorrow. What? No, let's do it now. I'm not tempting that group to come back, we're going back inside. Left TV in the open. Being raised Baptist, I think those were demons and angels respectively. My brother once asked me what I would have done had he ignored my warnings and kept walking, and I told him I'd have choked him out. It sounds edgy, but that's the only time I've ever said anything like that to him, because it was a legitimate Cold War between them. If we did something stupid, I'm not sure what would have happened aside from a dreadful certainty that our lives would have been in legitimate danger. To this day, what astounds me most was the distinct lack of fear. I really couldn't grasp just how deep those entities were. Maybe others have had similar feelings, maybe different, but that was mine.
Here's one from about a couple of years ago. Out in a desert riding quads with a buddy. Trying to track down old mines for cool rocks, maybe an artifact or 2. Locate one that's shown on the USGS topographic map we have. Entrances are covered with gates like pick related. Smell like nasty sewage coming out of the main entrance. Mine has been taken over by bats. Break off some neat marble from a nearby outcropping and move on. Look for another mine I heard about from a guy at a local rock show, supposedly a good place to find nice malachite samples and the occasional piece of native copper. Supposedly a few miles from the previous one, tucked away behind some rough terrain that keeps most off-roaders and casual explorers away. It's off my map, so I need to try to remember the landmarks he gave me. Sure enough, there is what was at one point an old access road for a mine where the guy said it was. The road has been basically destroyed over the years, with several parts of it collapsing into deep ravines and washes. I've been riding since I was a small child, so I'm very experienced with rough terrain. Buddy has been riding off-road for several years as well. Still get to a point where we have to hop off the quads and continue on foot. Have to scramble through some rough terrain for about an hour, but eventually find the mine. Buddy doesn't like going underground, wants to sift through the tailings instead. Stay out here in case you get trapped, Anon. Notredwarf.jpg. Enter the mine with walkie-talkies for communication. It's a pretty good sized mine, everything looks pretty solid and there aren't any unusual smells. Get about 50 feet in, pass a few minor side passages, find some old mine cart tracks. Follow them further in. Tunnel splits, follow the tracks and find some old rusty piping. Also find a few old boxes labeled Apache Powder Company. Boxes look mostly full of dust, but there are a few sticks of dynamite inside. Don't want to risk accidentally setting off unstable old dynamite, so I head back to the fork and take the other tunnel. Find a kick-ass malachite deposit. Work at it with my pick and eventually get a sweet chunk of fibrous malachite out. Put it in my backpack and follow the tunnel back until it stops. There's a small room in the back, nothing much to see. Suddenly catch a giant whiff of something decomposing. Look around, don't see anything obvious. There's a small exploratory tunnel in the back that looks to have partially collapsed. Shine my light in to check it out. Dead rabbit torn to pieces inside. Still in the process of decomposition. Decide that this mine has been fun, but I'm now done with it. Radio Buddy and say I'm done and coming out. Hear him yelling something down near the entrance. Ask him what he's yelling about over the radio. He replies that we don't need to use the radios if I'm just dicking around near the entrance. I tell him that I'm probably a good 100 feet back in the end of a mine tunnel. There's a pause and he comes back talking much quieter. Anon, something's moving around near the entrance. Tactically shit bricks. Ask him if it's a coyote or anything. It's barely out of the range of his light and he won't go past the entrance, but he's certain it's not a coyote. Well fuck, I'm trapped. He says he'll try and hit it with a rock to scare it into a side passage. Get my rock pick ready, really wish I'd bothered to bring my gun. He gives me a 3, 2, 1 countdown and there's a pause. Suddenly loud ass scream, sort of like you'd hear from a mountain lion, but deeper and more ragged. Fuck. Buddy yells that it ran into a side passage. I'm already running. Book it as fast as I can without tripping. Entrance is in sight, Buddy is visibly freaking out. Glance into a side passage as I run past. Catch a glimpse of eye shine and something pale and hairless. Sprinting intensifies. Meet up with Buddy, we both take off. Don't want to risk accidentally setting off unstable old dynamite, so I head back to the fork and take the other tunnel. Find a kick-ass malachite deposit. Work at it with my pick and eventually get a sweet chunk of fibrous malachite out. Put it in my backpack and follow the tunnel back until it stops. There's a small room in the back, nothing much to see. Suddenly catch a giant whiff of something decomposing. Look around, don't see anything obvious. There's a small exploratory tunnel in the back that looks to have partially collapsed. Shine my light in to check it out. Dead rabbit torn to pieces inside. Still in the process of decomposition. Decide that this mine has been fun, but I'm now done with it. Radio buddy and say I'm done and coming out. Hear him yelling something down near the entrance. Ask him what he's yelling about over the radio. He replies that we don't need to use the radios if I'm just dicking around near the entrance. I tell him that I'm probably a good 100 feet back in the end of a mine tunnel. There's a pause and he comes back talking much quieter. Anon, something's moving around near the entrance. Tactically shit bricks. Ask him if it's a coyote or anything. It's barely out of the range of his light and he won't go past the entrance, but he's certain it's not a coyote. Well fuck, I'm trapped. He says he'll try and hit it with a rock to scare it into a side passage. Get my rock pick ready, really wish I'd bothered to bring my gun. He gives me a 3, 2, 1 countdown and there's a pause. Suddenly loud ass scream, sort of like you'd hear from a mountain lion, but deeper and more ragged. Fueluk. Buddy yells that it ran into a side passage. I'm already running. Book it as fast as I can without tripping. Entrance is in sight, Buddy is visibly freaking out. Glance into a side passage as I run. Past. Catch a glimpse of eye shine and something pale and hairless. Sprinting intensifies. Meet up with Buddy, we both take off.
Oh, a West Virginia story. Be me. Driving with GF Innawoods on switchbacks to campsite we picked randomly from Google Maps that we've never been to before. Woods got spooky and thin like you could peer off real deep into them. Pick related is borderline and you can clearly see how the forest changes. All animal noise stopped. Dirt road. Forest gets dark even though it's like 2 p.m. and sunny above the trees. Wild old man appears. Didn't see any cars driving up. No houses around. How the fuck did he get here? Am already driving slow. Pull up next to him. He is just walking along a dirt switchback literally 10 miles from anything. He must be 80 years old, walking with a limp, frail, withering and literally looks like he hasn't eaten in years. I slow to a stop and roll down my window. His head turns awkwardly way too slow. Do you know where Hawk Recreation Area is? Yeah, keep going along this road, it's where we are headed. GF looks creeped out. Old guy pipes up again, oh good, heard it was nice there. I'm sure glad I'm going the right way. I feel like I've been walking forever. Look down at his clothes after noticing a strange bright blue/green feather in his fedora, look dated, dusty, tattered, and about from the 1920s. NNNN. I blurt out have a nice day. And drive off. Drive 20 more minutes to campground. Completely empty. No noise. Oh wait, there's an old creepy van in the camp host site. Parked car next to camp host, doesn't seem like anyone's in there and it looks abandoned. Shrug it off and look around. Notice you can see all the way down the switchbacks from this site. Notice the woods are way too manicured and thin even though it's dark as fuck. Severe lack of understory, like it's all been raked up. No mushrooms. No plants. Just trees and a small amount of duff. Hair stands up, gets more creepy. Van door opens. Creak. Stomp 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 stomp. GF and I look at each other. Decide to go back to car even though we just heard someone next to camp host van. Get back to the car. Notice van door is open and I can't see anyone around. Scan the woods and realize again all of these trees are about wide enough to comfortably hide behind. Realize it's real easy to hide from people here if you understand your vantage points. Realize we're being watched obviously. Van stink suddenly appears. Fuck, it stinks. Look inside van, looks like a homeless guy lives there but just been there way too long. Drugs probably too. Notice a robe, like a black hooded one tossed on the front seat. Don't understand why everything is so badly stained. Get in car with GF and start driving. We don't even look at each other. We just both knew we're not staying here. At the exit. Same old fedora man is standing there glaring like the dude from that Heaven's Gate cult. Innawoods get even fucking darker somehow. Fuck full panic mode. I've only been there 10 minutes. No way did this old man make it up here in that time. but there he is. Realize his buddy is out there behind me somewhere peering from behind a tree. How many of these fuckers are hiding behind trees watching us? Rustle around in the back seat for weapon. Can't find it. Can't stop looking straight ahead, but at the same time not making eye contact. Fuck, I'll shoot this fucker down if he tries anything. Instant feeling that I could try, but this dude is probably ethereal or a demon or whatever the fuck floating right up the goddamned mountain. Windows are down, but I try not to make eye contact. Hear something as I drive past him. Have a nice day. Make it out. After the switchbacks the sun turns on again, and it's literally like sunny in the middle of the afternoon. Probably serial killers or a cult or demons or whatever the fuck. I dunno, man. Haven't been camping since
August 14, 2002. Argentina, Mendoza. While having my usual night walks, I saw a gnome/forest creature with pointy head and a stick digging something right beside a tree. I got a shock of my life, made a scream, and it got shocked too. He then magically disappeared in an instant. I wouldn't believe your story for a second, except I have a friend who claims she saw a gnome up in Acadia National Park several years ago. For context, this girl is a real fucking pushover emo. This was one of the few times that I ever saw her adamant about anything. Her story was pretty much this: she was walking a trail up in Acadia National Park. It's December and the place is deserted because most people in that area, I guess, leave town for the winter. Anyway, she's an aspiring writer, so she brings her little notebook with her and writes for a long while. So she's been sitting on this log for maybe half an hour, writing, when she hears these clicks or pops that she describes as sounding like wood blocks. They're getting closer. Then way off down the trail she sees this tiny man with a big pointy hat. At most 10 inches tall, way too small to be human, and he's even dressed like the gnomes in pictures and has a long white beard and everything, only he's skinny. He's got this thing in his hand that looks like a long wooden rod, and he's walking around tapping the trees like he's checking them. Then, as he's tapping a nearby tree, he suddenly freezes, then turns quickly. Catches my friend watching him. Scowls. Then poof, he's gone in an instant.
Finally, something isn't horny retardation on /x/. OP, UI. Either way, I do have a personal experience to add to this. Be me. Australian, unfortunate, I know. About 28 at that point. Come into possession of a large rural property west of Terry in Hunter Valley and a very large chunk of cash after my grandfather's passing. Decide fuck it after a while and decide to settle there to become relatively self-sufficient, spoilered, and just to be left alone, to be honest, spoiler. Buy some chickens, some goats, and, just for fun, just because I was able to, a mule. I love this creature beyond all belief. Was already saddle trained by the time I got him. Name him Jack. Fast forward a few months. Be part of an equestrian hiking club up in the Blue Mountains. Kind of an oddball though, since most of the other members of the group I usually ride with are young girls and their ponies, normally alongside one or both of their parents. All except our supervisor/guide, Noah, an abo guy with a rough-cut whaler horse named Steel. Most hikes usually end up with me sticking to the back of the pack and talking with Noah. This goes on for months. Practically a supervisor myself now, often asked to help out with issues on the road. Usually pulling younger riders up on their rein/saddle or foot position or despooking other horses. Come to really appreciate how calm and collected my mule is in comparison. Noah trusts me immensely, can see I've got all my shit together. Asks me if I would want to come on a multi-day trip through the national park and up past Nunes Plateau with another group. Fuck yeah.jpg. Make preparations. Get there with Jack, greeted by Noah and a bunch of older, more experienced riders with actual full-sized horses for once. Goes off without a hitch for the first day. Cut to that night, everyone's hitched their animals and have set up camp for the night. 2 a.m. Being a light sleeper, I am immediately aware that something has severely spooked one of the horses. Stamping, whining, making a real scene. All the other horses were awake, whickering nervously at each other. Get out there since I realize nobody else will. Get a little bit spooked myself as the horse doesn't calm down right away even with my methods. Starts kicking behind itself. Grab flashlight. Check behind it. Hear a sort of tromping scuttle from whatever it was and see leaves being kicked up from the upper comers of my flashlight. Assumed it was just a wombat or a swamp wallaby or something, definitely sounded like one, and they're both common around here anyway. Hagrid should not have done that. PNG. Cut to the next day. Wake up tired, as per usual. Noah tells everyone that this is going to be the longest part of the trip, and will likely take until late evening to get to the next campsite. Perfect. JPEG. Saddle up, Jack, we get on with it. Walking all day, couple of pit stops for water and shit. Sun starts setting as we get relatively close to the next site. Jack starts acting up in the middle of the trail. Only just noticed that he'd picked up a load of ticks on one of his feet/legs, on the same foot that he busted a shoe on a few days before the trip, and was still getting used to the new one. Tell Noah I gotta deal with this, wants everyone to stop. Urge him onwards, tell him I won't be long and that the trail's obvious from here. He trusts me enough to know what I'm doing, but pleads with me to not get lost along the way, says that he'd leave a fire or something going so I could find them get to picking. Somehow didn't notice that Jack apparently had a small nick across from his hoof, which is what attracted all the ticks. Shit.jpg. Pick out all the ticks from his leg, clean his wound with antibacterial wipes, check his shoe. All this takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes we didn't have. Shit.jpg. The sun was just barely there, could only just see the trail. Looking for the light of a fire or something up ahead. Nothing. Inevitably, we took a wrong turn. Shit.jpg. Wander up the side of a fucking mountain for about 15 minutes, not knowing where we were going. Jack suddenly, in the middle of what was supposedly the trail, gives a quick snort, and abruptly stops. Ears pricked directly forwards. Give him a tap, try to get him to move forward a bit. Nothing. Gently tug on his reins to get him to focus. Nothing. He is completely seized up. I know this animal very intimately, and know that he only does this if something has really spooked him. Start to feel very uneasy myself. Pull on his reins a little harder. Jack turns his head very slightly towards me. Only just enough that I can see the whites of his eyes are fully exposed. Scared now. Small rustling is heard in front of us. Jack snaps his head forward again, splays his front feet slightly. Keep talking to him softly and patting his haunches, trying to calm him down. In reality, I think I was trying to reassure myself more than the mule. Suddenly become blisteringly aware of the silence. Complete and utter silence. No owls or possums calling out, no frogs, no crickets. Nothing but my own slightly labored breathing. Hear small rock get dislodged behind us. Jack flinches, starts slowly stepping back. Instantly, I hear that tromping scuttle I heard before coming at us from behind and in front. Jack flips his shit. Makes a sound I have never heard come out of an animal before or since. Jumps a full foot in the air with a sprawling rear-legged kick, almost completely throwing me from his saddle. Bolts down the mountain at breakneck speed. Meanwhile, during that jump, one of my boots got caught in the left stirrup iron. Now being dragged over jagged rocks down a mountain at immense speeds by my left leg that's still attached to the saddle of a terrified mule. Hoop-dee-doo. Despite protecting my head with my arm, I'm still acutely aware that the scuttling sound is still directly next to us. Can barely see shit, it's almost completely dark, only just make out that leaves and rocks and shit are being kicked up about a meter next to us, somehow managing to keep pace. Desperately try to make purchase on anything I can to try and pull myself up back onto the saddle. Manage to somehow grab onto what I can only assume was the saddle flap and hoist myself up a little way. Bad idea.png. Arm protecting my head makes violent contact with a massive rock pointing out of the ground. Wrist gets fucking dislocated. Ow. Not a moment after, the scuttling to my side gets much louder and I feel what I could only picture to be a fucking talon strike the side of my head, making a deep cut just above my temple. One might assume it was another rock, but rocks don't fucking cling to the place they cut you. Jack cries out and almost tramples me, trying not to trip over himself. Resisting the urge to shit myself, I somehow manage to flail my body upwards enough to give me enough clarity to grab onto the saddle's pommel without my leg slipping through the stirrup and hoist myself back up with one hand. Basically clinging to Jack for dear life now, my face keeps getting whapped by tree branches as we finally manage to reach the bottom of the mountain. Directly into camp. Didn't even notice the light of the bonfire we were rushing towards, had my head down, focusing on the trees and the ever-impending and ever-closing in scuttling next to us on both sides. Jack also apparently didn't expect this, as when he suddenly hit flat ground after the downwards incline, he completely toppled over, now fully throwing me from his saddle and onto the hard stony dirt below. He was fine, I was not. He got up almost immediately, kicking and braying and spooking all the other horses and sending everyone in the camp into a panic. I just writhed there for a moment, winded and in a lot of pain, just trying to get up and fucking run. Noah rushes to me, hands all over me, trying to set me right. In his defense, I did have blood streaming from the side of my head, was covered in deep scratches and had a limp wrist. Managed to wheeze out, hand me a flashlight. A flashlight? You need a doctor dash. Hand me a flashlight, cunt. Could still hear them. The scuttling, the rustling. It was still there. Pacing around the camp. The spooked brays and squeals of the horses, and the concerned babbling of the people in camp almost seemed muffled in comparison to the sound of what I knew was there, pacing around the edges of the fire's light. God handed my flashlight. Could hear one of them, not but 10 meters away. Shine my light directly at where I knew it was. Nothing. A flurry of leaves and small twigs were kicked up as it skittered up the small gully it was on like a frightened lizard. But there was no thing, no form there to be seen. Turn off flashlight. Turn to Noah. We can't stay here tonight. What do you mean? WH. What did you d-dash? I stand up. Look him dead in the face. We can't stay here tonight. I don't actually remember much after that. I know that Noah patched me up and acted very creeped out. We were forced to stay there for the night, but I refused to let anyone douse the fire, and everyone and their horses were up all night. Everyone blamed me for being tired the next morning and having to cut the trip short so I could get proper medical attention. I didn't care. All I remember doing is sitting on a log, listening to those things circle our camp until sunrise, then spending about 4 days in hospital while my brother took care of Jack. Obviously, I haven't been back there since.
I've been fortunate, or unfortunate, enough to only have one kinda spooky experience myself. In high school, walking around with my friend in the woods behind his house. Been in these woods thousands of times since we were in elementary school. Just bullshitting and chatting as we come up to a rocky hill, open sky above. Later in the day, not quite dusk but it's coming fast. Not usually a problem, again been in this place more times than we can count even at night, walk this exact path. Stop on the hill just talking. Hold up, you hear that? We stop for a second and listen. I say, can you see? There's very faint singing coming from down in the woods. Somebody's singing the fucking Star-Spangled Banner. Neck hairs raised up. We listen for a second. We decide to check it out. To go in the direction of the singing, the path goes a little way down the hill and takes a bend back into the trees. As we turn the bend, we both just stop in our tracks. The entrance back into the woods from the hill is practically a wall of darkness, seems way darker than it should be, and still there's this barely perceptible singing coming from within. Neither of us can force ourselves to move another inch forward. Just turn tail and basically run back the way we came to friend's house. And that's really it. It sounds kinda silly in retrospect being scared of someone singing the national anthem in the woods, but at the time hearing it and coming up to the mouth of the woods, basically every instinct in my body was saying to GTFO. Additional bonus spook is that when my friend and I talked about it later, we both heard the same singing, but I heard an adult man's voice and he swore it was a little girl singing.